Picture this. Sun's rising, light northwest wind, cold temps, a few days before the full moon. That's right, it's Wahoo season. Wahoo season in South Florida and the Bahamas. Late November here, South Florida guys. Welcome to the Fish Bluewater channel. Jamie Bunn. We got a lot of guys that love to catch meat fish and love to chase wahoo, that this is their favorite time of the year because particularly over in the Bahamas, I mean, there's wahoo to be caught right out front as well. Guys are having a lot of success with planers and just trolling out front. But there's nothing like that high-speed wahoo in the bite in the Bahamas when you hit it right. And so it's been a minute for me personally since I have actually wahoo fished over in the Bahamas. Obviously, it was tough there for a couple of years with COVID and all that stuff. And but we may have an opportunity at a trip next week. So I dove back into the rig box just to see what we had, what may need some attention, if we had enough rigs, and I thought it would be cool to show you guys some of the rigs that we typically use here when we're high-speed trolling for wahoo, and also show you guys how to completely build a rig from start to finish. So stay tuned. We are about to get riggy with it. All right, so wahoo fishing. You know, wahoos obviously are a very aggressive fish. They are one of the fastest swimming fish in the ocean, and they can close the distance on bait fish extremely fast. So that's part of the reason why I think high-speed trolling has been so successful, is that at the rate of speed, right, that you are pulling your baits, typically it's at a speed that is faster than you might target other species of fish like kingfish, dolphin, or tunas. It's not to say that you won't catch the occasional dolphin or tuna high-speed trolling, but far less common because typically, you know, boats are pulling these lures anywhere from 15 to 18 knots. So, you know, when you talk about moving at a speed like that, where you're close to 20 miles an hour, you know, you typically want a lure style presentation that's going to be very aerodynamic, that's going to pull through the water and just under the surface of the water in a very streamlined fashion, right? Not a lot of resistance, like your slower speed trolling for marlin, stuff like that, where they might pull like chugger style heads and knocker style heads up on the surface. Not as common. That's going to be very uncommon for this kind of fishing because of the style and the approach. So before we get into like constructing the rig, let's talk a little bit about like the parts and pieces. So you know, this is out in front of me. Here's just 3 that have already been rigged up, essentially ready to rock, with the exception of basically the loop that needs to be completed on the other end of the cable leader here. But you know, I've wahoo fished off and on my whole life, since I was in my early 20s. That's well over 20 years ago. You can do the math. And I gotta say, by and large, this style lure that I'm holding here in my hand has been the most effective, most popular. It's what you'll see in most of your tackle shops right now. RJ Boyle, Real Deal, Custom Rod and Reel, for all the pre-rig stuff that they sell for the guys that, you know, would rather have it ready to roll than rig themselves. A lot of what you're gonna see is gonna be this lure right there in their store. And so what do you got? So for starters, your standard wire is going to be a 480-pound braided cable. You can fish heavier single strand wire. I'm not as big of a fan. You know, some guys will argue that it tracks better. Maybe you get more bites, it's sleeker. I don't know. I've never had many issues with this style rig. Easy to fish, easy to handle. So 480-pound cable it is. Typically, you know, you ask 5 different guys, you might get 5 different answers, but the general length on your cable is going to be anywhere from probably, I'd say, 3 to 5 feet. Coming down the rig from there, we have basically a Hawaiian Islander style lure. And then underneath that, basically we have a doubled up octopus skirt. So there's two skirts, one inside the other. I've got an egg sinker up in the head of that, which also helps to kind of the lure to pull a little bit better, keep it tracking down in the water behind the lead and your shot cord and all that. It also helps to can serve as a spacer. And then this is an older style, basically hook set that has some heat shrink tube to protect the crimps connections. This one actually has a barrel swivel, which does allow a little bit more movement from the hook. And then we've got some heat shrink tube to keep the hook stiff and in place and not flopping around loosely when it's tracking, which I feel lends a better opportunity for a good connection on the bite. And that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a simple rig. It's, you know, it's not hard to tie or to rig, and we're going to show you that process now from beginning to end and talk about a few other things. And you'll see here, obviously I've got, this is like a, you know, a pink and purplish blue with some bonita style coloring underneath with some pink highlights. We've got an orange and black one right here for the darker side. Obviously you can take a look at that and see that it looks very similar to a peanut dolphin, you know, yellows, blues, greens, all that kind of stuff. Again, you know, everybody has their favorites. Black and red is a traditional, black and purple, blue and white. You know, some guys will say they love light colors for light days, dark colors for dark days. I don't get into that so much. I would tell you that I think it's important to have like a variety. My rig box behind me probably has 20 to 25 of these things ready to rock and roll for a couple of reasons. Wahoo have very sharp teeth, as you guys probably know. You're pulling these things at a high rate of speed, you know, the impact of the bite, you know, a couple of fish. You know, you may find yourself throughout the day having to reskirt lures, new skirts, things of that nature. So you're going to go through some terminal tackle, and you may find that a certain color pattern, could be light or dark, is working better than the other. And so if you see that that's happening and you're getting more bites in one particular kind of color spectrum, maybe you start swapping out, right? And start changing rigs based on the bite pattern and what you see happening. So let's get into showing you guys how to get a rig set up. Now, you'll see what I have here in my hand. This is a little different than what I just showed you in these pre-rigged ones. I was actually in RJ Boyle's shop yesterday, grabbing a couple of things. I talked to Nick, his store manager, about some stuff. And while I was there, these Wahoo wire rigs caught my eye. We talked a little bit about it, and I liked the concept. So this is pre-rigged, ready to go. Again, 480 pound. You have your heat shrink tube, which is basically this heat shrink tube right here before it is heated and adheres down to the wire and the spacer beads. And then these spacer beads right here are stacked up on this cable to provide the spacing necessary to get the hook where you want it in the lure. And so looking at this, again, I'll show you that typically my recommendation is these are 12-inch skirts doubled up that are then cut back to allow the hook to hang just out of the bottom of the lure, so that as they're pulling, you don't have to worry about any of the skirt getting embedded on the barb of the hook. And in theory, you should hopefully get a cleaner bite regardless of the angle that the fish may approach and attack, obviously, or eat the lure. So again, here's one that, and I'm going to show you how we did this on camera, but this is already kind of pre-rigged and ready to go. This is I've got a white 12-inch skirt on the inside and a nice kind of, it almost has got a light kind of Wahoo bonita pattern, light blues and blacks. Two 12-inch skirts. I've got a 3-ounce egg sinker right here, up inside there. And then obviously we've got our beads spaced out on the 480 pound that's been crimped, heat shrinked, and all that kind of stuff. So next up, we are gonna show you guys how to get this bad boy rigged up. So for starters, I'm gonna lay this out, right, kind of on the table here, like so. And my lead is just behind finishes off just behind the neck of this skirt. So the whole concept here is these beads are basically spacers that allow the hook to get as far back as you want it to, and it's going to stop right where it hits that lead, okay? So you can see where it hits that lead, I've still got probably a good 2 inches of skirt that extends beyond that. And I want my skirt, in essence, to probably finish off right around just below the heat shrink kind of area of the hook. So what I'm gonna do now is, I've got the skirt stretched out nicely, and I'm basically got an eyeball mark on where I need to cut this skirt, which I'm gonna grab in my hands like so. Yeah, that looks good. Right about there, in order to cut off the excess that is not going to be needed. Now, if you want to do anything, err on the side of maybe being a little long, because you can always cut a little more off, right? You can't ever add it. So basically just going to take my scissors like so. That's all discard. Looks like I got a couple little extra guys right there. So now that's cut to length. It should be pretty good once I get it where I want it, and if I need to trim it up a little bit more, I can. So we're going to take this like so, and that 480 pound cable. So we're in. All right, so cable's in, sliding down to where our spacers are. Voila, I think we're looking pretty good there. I'm gonna take a little bit off of this. I've got a side over here that's just a hair longer. So I'm gonna, and you can do that easily just like this. You can kind of go around if you want to, and there's no like perfect science to it. It's not like the Wahoo are saying, oh my gosh, his cuts aren't exactly even. But that looks good. So it's hanging just above. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a little more off of that just to get it a little further away from that barb. So do this. Take off just all the way around, maybe about another 1/2 inch. Just to get it a little further away from the point of that hook. So I don't want it to, in any way, while it's pulling, have an opportunity to embed in that. So that looks pretty good there. Looks about right where I think I'd want it to be. Okay. So we've got our double squid skirt, octopus skirt on there, whatever you want to call it. And next up is our Islander lure. This has got a solid black head. I kind of like this color combination. I've got a little black, a little white, a little blue. We got some white and some blues and some blacks in there. Again, do I think the Wahoo like really evaluated that hard? No. But I think, you know, they certainly could tend to react to, as I already said, like certain color variations of color, dark and light, you know, from one time to the next, or one day to the next, depending upon your condition. So just got to get this. Sometimes it can be a little tricky. All right, so tight fit. I went and grabbed actually another pair of dikes because those diagonal pliers weren't cutting that clean, and this 480-pound cable coming through the diameter of the hole on this Islander lure, it was super tight. And I'll just tell you, sometimes they can be finicky. You gotta just take your time and try to kind of work it through there, twist it. I actually kind of cut this cable a little bit of an angle to get it through, but you can see it's that snug of a fit that it's not even like sliding down on its own. But now that we've got it on, I'm gonna bring it down, and you got yourself right there one bad mofo lure that I know is gonna get eaten if we go across next week. So the last step in this process is to actually get a loop end on this, which ultimately this would connect to a snap swivel on our shock cord, and then the other end of the shock cord attaches to the rod. If I had some little thimbles, I would probably use them, which a thimble is just that little horseshoe piece of terminal tackle to kind of, that the braided cable wraps around. I don't, but I did find some chafing cable that I had, which this 480 should slide right up in there. And basically the whole idea there is just to protect a little bit any of the wear from the pressure of the snap swivel on the braided cable. I don't, honestly, do I feel like it's absolutely necessary? I would probably tell you no, but I got it, so we'll use it. All right, so right here is a double barrel crimp that we're going to use. Very important, guys. You do not want to use aluminum crimps on this braided cable, because the aluminum, the way it will react with this cable, it will actually cause corrosion that could allow for the cable to break inside, and you've got obviously a not good situation in terms of the possibility of breaking under pressure. I got the wrong size crimp. Let me grab the other crimps out of the box. So it's as simple as running the 480 through there. I actually slid a little piece of heat shrink tube down on this that I'm gonna heat up over top of the crimp once that connection is made and finished. There we go, got it through. Now I'm going to come back down through that crimp, give myself a little tag in, pull it around like so, keep pulling it until that chafe tube comes nice and tight. And now we are ready to crimp it off right there. All right, guys, so I got the proper size crimpers. I'm gonna open the tool up, and I'm gonna probably go right into the second set of teeth or jaws on this. There we go. That's crimped off nice and tight now. Probably could have gone with the third set on that, but it'll be fine. And now I got this little piece of heat shrink tube. I'm going to fire up this torch that I have here. And we're just going to heat the heat shrink tube down on the bottom side of that crimp. And the whole reason we're doing that is really just to try and protect. It's not even really for cosmetic purposes. It's just to protect the tag ends that may come out of that that crimp, so that your hands don't get all burred up when it's all said and done. If you happen to be kind of bringing the fish in, or, you know, let's say you've hooked a fish, you got him to the boat, you're grabbing the shock cord, your leader in the fish, guy's getting ready to gaff it, and you reach down and you get a little close. Sometimes without that little bit of heat shrink tube, a lot of times guys get tag ends from those sharp metal shavings if there's anything sticking out in their hands, their fingers, which is painful. And so that's the main reason that use heat shrink tube on that end if you want to. We got that connection there. There's our lure. And at the end of the day, this thing is now ready to fish.